Pelosi can't decide whether it's the Russians or the Chinese.
We have to play it for our people. It's embarrassing.
But you get an idea of what happens when you basically don't take the keys away when it's past due. But that's to decide.
She needs to reboot. She's like, Russians or the Chinese? Is it the It's like a computer.
House all the time. So I have a feeling for what feelings they have. But we have to think about what we're doing. And what we have to do is try to stop the suffering in Gaza. This is women and children, people.
She's got that part right. She's good.
Address that. But for them to call for a ceasefire is Mr. Putin's message.
There it is.
Like, I don't know how insane you really have to be, because, again, the whole point is that she's talking out of two sides of her mouth. On the one hand, we have to, sorry, I can't help it.
I hate it. You don't do women well.
The violence is terrible, but you are also Putin's puppet. It's like, what, lady? What are you doing? Like, at some point,
she had it right. Like, if it had ended there, it wouldn't have been so bad, right? But the fact that her 80% of her own party is demanding a ceasefire, so it's not even like it's some fringe thing. That's how ridiculous she looks.
I don't understand why ceasefire is this. They treat the word ceasefire like they treat the word socialist.
Well, they treat this, it's
or intifada for that matter, right? I mean, these are terms, socialism, capitalism, these are all terms, democracy, these are terms that they distort in the service of their own corruption. I mean, to the point that we raised before, no one should be surprised by this either. You think about Medicare for all. That was a policy that a majority of those bipartisan majorities favored that policy. And who kept it from becoming the subject of a vote in Congress? Nancy Pelosi, right? Yeah. I mean, the NSA surveillance machine, she could have stopped that at about 20 different points in time. She was the chair of the House Intelligence Committee before she became the Speaker of the House. Yeah. In both of those capacities, she could have stood up for constitutional rights. And in neither of them, at any point over the decades that she held those roles, did she do so. At least you could say about Dianne Feinstein that she showed up for work once, you know, when she was fighting the CIA over the torture report, but like, which incidentally has never been released still to this day.
It doesn't count. That you're being very generous. You're being extremely, extremely generous.
Nice.
No, this is so absurd to me with her.
Well, not over yet.
Oh, good
Mr.
God.
Putin's message. Make no mistake, this is directly connected to what he would like to see.
Yes,
Same
Putin
thing
wants
with
ceasefire.
It's about Putin's message. I think some of these protests.
Can I just say, if Putin wants a ceasefire, can we have that message?
Some I think are connected to Russia, and I say that having looked at this for a long time now, as you know.
You think some of these protests are Russian plants?
See, they're plants. I think some financing should be investigated.
I think so too.
First of all,
I think we should investigate a lot of financing.
Listen, there's a lot of bad people in corporate media, but Dana Bash is a certain level of scum. Like, she really loves this role that she plays.
She has such a horse face.
And you of all people.
Let me tell you something. Everybody, all women are either monkeys, birds, or horses, and that's a horse face
right
there.
Are you like drunk and high? Like, what's
no,
going on?
I'm being very serious. She's got the Carly Simon horsey face.
You get on my ass whenever I say anything critical of women who actually deserve the criticism.
But I wasn't being mean.
I think that
Simon face.
Oh.
I'm just saying. Go on.
The point being is that Dana Bash is all too ready, willing, and able to play the female version of Jim Acosta and go right along with whatever the corporate talking point is.
Oh, okay, so Russians.
So we had to listen for 4 years. And listen, Shahid, you probably know this pretty well. Jim Acosta and Dana Bash have reputations for being absolute jerks of human beings. Yet, because they don't like Trump, and because Trump went, "You're totally fake news, Jim Acosta, you're really terrible," and they go on Trump's ass because he's the most guilty party, yet at the same time, you don't realize that if Trump really was the outlier, that would be one thing, but he's not. He's merely a symptom of the whole rotted system. The way that Dana Bash had the audacity not to say, with all due respect, former Madam Speaker, even though she still acts like she is the Speaker, how can you be so sure that the protesters are being funded by Putin or supporting Putin? She says they were probably supported by Putin, right? It's like the difference in language is so clear in terms of the message they're trying to put out there.
So let me ask you, if Putin in fact was supporting and financially backing, supporting for a ceasefire, would that be a problem? Like, and why and how in which that would be a problem? I'm not understanding. What do you think?
Well, I mean, there are legal restrictions on foreign monetary support, at least for election candidates and formal campaigns.
Yeah.
That's a legal restriction. I think foreign support for domestic social movements is, it's a different category altogether, though certainly it invites any, number of, it creates a broad political attack surface, let's put it that way. I mean, the part I would want to focus on here is—
You have to make me finish listening to this.
Well, this isn't the end, because this is her saying that it's the Russians' fault. Now we're going to see that, according to Medea Benjamin's Code Pink, they're representing China's interests now.
Most of your constituents want stop the genocide, stop the Holocaust.
By the way, can I just say the fact that she is where—
Did you see that?
We all know.
Oh my God.
We all know where they caught her. They caught her on her way to the San Francisco 49ers NFC Championship. She probably was sitting in the owner's suite.
Of course she was.
Guaranteed.
Well, and that's what you get. That is where your head goes from this.
Because, she was wearing the 49ers sweater.
The point is, she was so dismissive. And then what was the comment? Go back to China?
Yeah, well.
And those
Democrats want the ceasefire. The Democrats want the ceasefire.
Did you see her hand
The
gesture?
Democrats want the ceasefire.
Did you hear something?
I know the voice of the woman who's on the tape there, and her action model is she bakes pies and brings them out to Pelosi's house. She's the most non-threatening person you could fathom. And the idea that Pelosi's response to her is to literally shoo her away. I don't know if you witnessed the hand gesture, but the expression of disdain.
So disgusting.
Common people, you don't belong in the Pacific Heights neighborhood of San Francisco. Go away.
It's disgusting.
You can't.
We often call Pacific Heights specific whites. Is the
Specific
other way
whites
to-
is the slang.
That's
I'm
kind
not
of funny.
For those of you who don't know, Pacific Heights, San Francisco is one of the wealthiest neighborhoods in the world. And so, of course, that's where Pelosi
I don't
lives.
think that she or any of the other people that are in those power positions should get a moment of peace when they're in public. And I've been saying this now. I do have a certain sympathy for Chuck Schumer's and Anthony Blinken's neighbors. I do. They could have lived there first. Like I said, if Chuck Schumer moved in next to me, I wouldn't want to be woken up with pots and pans at 6 o'clock in the morning because he's a douchebag. But that's let them take that up with their neighborhood watch, as far as I'm concerned. But these people should not get a moment's peace when they're in public.
No.
Not one. I don't care. And yes, I would follow Kirsten Sinema into a bathroom. I'd even stand on the toilet and look over the stall if she felt the need to ignore me.
We have a friend who actually did this to Wasserman Schultz once, and she said of all the people, and she has followed dozens and dozens of representatives, and she says, bar none, Wasserman Schultz is the nastiest person out of all of them. And I'm like, that checks out. So unfortunately, we're in a situation right now where, as has always been the fear, and I've always maintained that Trump's bark is a lot worse than his bite.
He's just the cold sore, people. He's just the sore at the end.
Like, there are people in this country who actually think in terms of what can be accomplished as commander-in-chief. Again, it's not the question of Trump being bad. It's the question of the underlings and the people like that sit on the Supreme Court, for example, that are the real problems. No, I'm not denying that. I'm saying that I don't think Trump's heart. Trump doesn't have a black heart like a Ron DeSantis does.
No, he doesn't have a heart.
Like, to me, that's a big difference between how much vindictiveness. Yes, Trump has a vindictive nature, but I don't see him doing the types of things.
I don't see him doing collective punishment.
Yeah, this is
at the level. I don't. And I'm not supporting him. I'm a Cornel West supporter. You guys know that. Like, that's where, and I'm hoping he gets on the ballot here. And if he doesn't, I'm going green.
And the whole problem,
whatever.
And the whole problem that I don't think a lot of people realize, and I'm sure you could speak to this, is that there really is no difference between President Blinken, as I like to say, and John Bolton. They're basically the same person.
Right.
It just so happens that Blinken is a more dignified person in the eyes of the liberal elites. That's the difference.
It's the facial hair.
Well, again, we're falling into the prey of the trap of personifying problems that are structural. The reason you're seeing little daylight between these figures is precisely because there has been a bipartisan consensus in Washington for 75 years on international corporate resource extraction an armed military force to ensure the availability of foreign markets to U.S. corporations to monetize their assets. This is the story. I mean, just a quick history here for people who didn't figure out how we became so intractably opposed to Iran. It was because in 1953, Iran tried to take its oil fields off the international market, and the CIA responded by staging a coup.
Oh, yeah.
And the revolution that came predictably 20 years later, after the rule of a brutal U.S.-sponsored dictator, then left the country in the hands of right-wing theocrats. That's the result of U.S. foreign policy. And this pattern of machinations from Washington to Wall Street, undermining U.S. national security while claiming to advance it. Now, when we look at this continuity from Democratic to Republican administrations, I want to quote Ari Fleischer here. He was the press secretary for George W. Bush in his second term. And he gave this quote sometime in the early 2010s, well after Bush had left office. I think this was Obama's second term at this point. And he said, yeah, it must have been, because he said that Obama's presidency with respect to U.S. foreign policy was the third and fourth terms of the Bush administration.
Sure.
And, you know, that should turn anyone's stomach, because we are talking about a murderous foreign policy that pays no respect for international human rights, systematically degrades them at every conceivable opportunity, insulates human rights abusers from torturers at the CIA to IDF commanders that are engaged, as you've noted, to collective punishment, have been since well before the October 7th escalation. There is no opportunity at the ballot box for we, the people of the United States, to curtail the corrupt military-industrial establishment that a former U.S. president warned us would destroy democracy in America. It's almost to the day. In fact, I guess it's 12 days after the anniversary of Eisenhower's speech in 1961, where he coined the term the military-industrial complex in the context of a warning to the American people in his last act as president, saying, this is going to come for you. I had to build this to fight the Nazis. It's still here. It has its own interests. Look out, because it's coming for you. That's what he warned us of. And what happened to his successor in the White House?
Thanks for watching. If you want to support our mission to transform politics into service, please like this video, subscribe, follow us on social media, and consider joining our Patreon, where you'll get early access to our interviews as well as other exclusive content. Links are in the description. Peace out.